Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for new stories from Yellow Cat. Send your own favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. Reddit lawyers, what is your greatest, most fierce I rest my case moment? Part 3. A lawyer friend of mine had this scenario. His client moved into a brand new office building. They got to do some construction work to set up their floor's offices the way they wanted. In the end, there was about an inch or so of space between the lip of the elevator door and the floor that was too big. That might not seem like a big problem, but it was causing people to trip over things all the time. They paid someone else to do a small pour of concrete to smooth things out and fix the problem since they were already building something. When the original construction company hears this, they use the fact that their contract hasn't been fully completed to say they can tear up the floor and fix it themselves. They do that, and now there's a big problem in the elevator lobby on that floor instead of just a small one next to the elevator. Different plus minus half-inch dips and hills all over the place. There wasn't much leveling done. After being told this was not acceptable, the construction company sent the client both a bill for the first redo, which they didn't want because they had already fixed the problem, and a quote for fixing it. The court was given a timeline of these events. They were then given a very scientific presentation on how truly awful this floor was, complete with high-resolution topographic maps of the surface that made it very clear how awful this floor was. As the lawyer talks to the construction company's lead engineer, he or she leans in and asks, "Is this work that your company will accept?" The reason this is such a mic drop is that it is handing the construction company a win, but at great cost. If they say yes, then the client has to pay the first bill and would have to pay for a redo. But then the lead engineer of that construction company goes on public record as stating that shoddy work is considered acceptable by the company. If they say no, then the construction company eats the cost of the redo and the redo necessary to fix it and goes on record as saying they screwed up. Well, this isn't an I rest my case moment, but it was a defund cross-examination. I was defending someone in an alimony case. In my state, living with a new lover while married is a reason not to get alimony. A PI had been following the plaintiff for a few months, but both she and the other side's lawyer had no idea. I had a lot of proof that the plaintiff had moved in with her new boyfriend and that even though they didn't have a marriage certificate, they were living together as husband and wife. So if I could show that they lived together, she wouldn't get alimony. I knew she would lie about a question I asked during cross-examination, so I hit her with a picture that showed she was wrong. "So, it's your testimony that John Doe never visited your house? Oh, so do you have an explanation for why he's walking in your front door in this photo? So, he did come over, but never stayed overnight? I see. Do you have an explanation for why his car was parked outside of yours overnight on XXXX and X nights as seen in these photographs?" I'd ask her a question for 45 minutes to an hour, she'd lie, and then I'd impeach her with a picture that clearly showed she was wrong. I caught her lying at least once every minute. She also never learned. Once she knew I'd catch her lying again, you'd think she'd tell the truth after a while, but she didn't. She kept lying. Wasn't the most exciting or even an I rest my case moment, but it was the most fun I've ever had on cross. In the subsequent order, the court made the specific finding that the plaintiff's testimony was without an iota of credibility. They spend the whole day making fun of each other, so they decide to go to a fast food place and fight. They part, get out, walk up right away, and start swinging. Kid A delivers the first blow straight to Kid B, knocking him out right away. It took only a few seconds for the whole fight to end with one punch. The restaurant's being sued because it didn't protect its customers. The case isn't strong. Unfortunately, Kid B hit the ground hard and his brain was badly hurt. There were attempts to make peace, but they wanted millions of dollars. When we walked in, we saw that 2 former employees were testifying about how big the crowds were getting after school. The lawyer for the plaintiff tried to show that the restaurant knew there would be trouble and should have had armed guards in the parking lot. In the best case, their witnesses were lying so much that they were breaking the law. Their credibility was questionable since they were very angry about being fired. We had a list of witnesses ready to show that what they said was not true. At the trial, the lawyer for the plaintiff spoke first. He spent a lot of time making the kids dislike each other, pointing out Kid B's bad behavior and talking about how much money he could make. A lot of groundwork was done to make people feel sorry for his client. On day 2, we'll take a break for lunch. After that, the defense presentation will happen. As we talked about where we were and what to do next, we realized that the restaurant wasn't really brought up. Plaintiff didn't call his star witnesses until the defense said the restaurant was safe. When we got back together, we said, "Defense rests, Your Honor." The lawyer for the plaintiff tripped and fell. He started frantically moving papers around on his desk and was stuttering. "I take it you will need a few minutes for your close?" asked the judge. The plaintiff's lawyer gave one of the worst closing arguments I've ever heard after the break. Jury, Kid B 10% at fault, Kid A 90% at fault, restaurant 0%. I argued a conversion case before a state of court appeals over a painting of a 1950s-era set coach commissioned and paid for by our clients who loaned to the current coach but was put in storage by new coach and found by other guy. My friend won at trial court but asked me to write and argue the appeal for him. It was my first appellate argument, so I worked my butt off. Had 3-ring binders with tabs I could flip to that went along with my argument outline. Practiced with friends, barely slept the night before. I was pumped and prepared. Other side appealed, so they go first. Get hammered by the court. It's kind of painful, but also terrifying because I was next. I figured I was going to get just as roasted. My turn comes up. I start my long-rehearsed presentation and almost immediately get interrupted with a question, direct to my point, essentially making it for me. I agree with the court and go to continue my argument, get interrupted again with a question, again on point, agree and answer, and before I move on, get a third question, essentially closing my case for me. I realize I can only hurt myself if I go on, as the court is obviously on my side. I ask, "Can I answer any other questions for the court?" The bench says no, I thank them and take my seat. 20 minutes of argument available to me, and I used 3. We won. What's your best story about quitting your job, part 3? I work in middle management, and my boss is really disorganized. He's really lost because this is his first time being in charge of something big. Besides that, he's a crazy micromanager. We don't have enough staff because he's always too busy and won't let anyone else help with hiring. So everyone is always too busy and morale goes down. Every year, the company does a survey to see how happy its employees are. When a new survey is due, the boss starts to get nervous and looks for someone to blame. I'm lucky. I get a call from HR a month before the poll. For a bunch of silly reasons, they're putting me on a performance improvement plan. Main reason, my boss didn't like that I only work 8 to 9 hours a day since I was paid by the hour. He thought 10 to 12 was better because he didn't like seeing me leave the building with the other workers on my shift, even though I was done with my work for the day. I fight every issue they bring up with all my might. For example, they bring up the fact that I came back to work after a recent death in the family because they couldn't figure out how to do scheduling or supply orders without me. They think the meeting will only last 30 minutes, but it ends up lasting 2 hours. I keep asking them what they'll use to judge my progress and make sure I'm getting better enough to avoid being fired. Finally, the HR rep let it slip that the employee surveys are coming up and will be a good way to see how I'm doing. The people my boss just worked hard for over a year are now responsible for how I do my job. After that, I learned how to play the game. When I got home, I updated my resume and began sending it out. I had 2 interviews in a week. After 2 days, I got a job offer with a big pay raise, which I obviously took right away. The next Monday, I walk in like Vince McMahon in that gif and immediately take the high road. I told my boss that I got an offer I couldn't refuse and thanked him for the chance. I also told him I would be leaving in a month to give them time to find a good replacement and teach some people how to do my main duties. There's nothing about the PIP. I told him I knew what he was up to and that he was trying to F me. kind and helpful all the way around. I will never forget the look of pure terror that flashed across his face for a split second before he pretended to be happy for me. I let my staff know I'm leaving, and they're sad about it because they know boss is the problem, not me. They take the time to tell me they value my friendship. They say this too many times, so now everyone at the facility knows how well liked I am. Also, boss can't blame me for the bad survey result after I've left. After that, things got small. I get a call from HR about a week before I leave. Tomorrow, my last check will be ready. Okay, that's weird, but thanks for the heads up, I say, not understanding what they mean. Then they tell me that my boss has decided to give me the rest of the money I'm owed. I'll still get paid until the day I gave my notice, but tomorrow is my last full day of work. I asked them why, since I was still being a good worker and making sure everything was set up before I left. I was going to train even more people next week. Nope, boss decided that I was done for some reason. My staff saved some money and planned to surprise me with a cake on my last day, but it didn't happen. I had to quickly say goodbye to the people I had become friends with in different departments. Some people were off that day, so I didn't get to say goodbye to them. I thought I would see them again next week. That day, my boss was definitely a ghost. After the call from HR the day before, I never saw him again. I turned in my laptop, keys, and badge at HR. Before I left, the rep, the same guy from the first PIP meeting, finally said, "So, company I currently work for, huh?" Wow, that was quick. I smiled and said, "Yup," and walked away. After a few days, I got a postcard in the mail with a QR code on it. It was my survey to see how happy my employees were. It was fun to fill that out. As a contract manager at one startup, I did a lot of work that helped the company succeed. Their product is now very well known and sales are through the roof. Even though it wasn't my job, I personally got a number of corporate partners to at least support our product. Many of them now use and promote it, which sent it through the roof and far beyond our original goals. As the company grew, so did its staff. Eventually, I was in charge of 20 people working in the contracts and legal department. Our flagship product for the second generation is about to go on sale. We are all under a lot of pressure because the due dates have been pushed up. I know that marketing department, along with ours, has worked crazy hours for at least 2 months now. We would often stay the night there and try to get the crap out. We had to talk to a lot of suppliers, write up contracts, and sign them all. We also had to make sure that everything went smoothly and that the contracts didn't leave us too open. Marketing was also working hard to get the word out about the product and build it up. In the same way, I'm sure engineering worked like horses, but since we weren't on the same floor, I can't say for sure. Of course, I guess the CEO wasn't to be found. He would stop by for an hour or two during the day and not pay much attention to the workers most of the time. He once showed up a little before the planned launch date and said, "If we reach this and this sales goal, we'll get bonuses." In fact, he had planned out exactly how bonuses would be given out based on how much profit each department makes. It was blown out of the water. We sold out everywhere, which was way more than anyone thought we would. The office had a huge party, and at the end, the CEO gave a speech telling us all that we have a lot to look forward to, like bonuses, and that departments that worked late will be rewarded extra kindly. My team was all around me during this speech, and we all looked at each other with pride and a sense of being valued. It was bonus time, and 2 departments got what they were promised. Marketing and my department got less than half of what was promised. This was even less than what we should have gotten if we met the goal. We in marketing were given a special reward of going bowling and having dinner. Many people on my team gave up a lot in their personal lives for this and got nothing in return. They were clearly very upset. I was so upset. I yelled at the CEO when I went into his office and begged him to keep his word. He said no, and we later learned that he had booked a villa in a very fancy place. I told him to go F himself because the way he acts will sink his company. I quit the company right then. Soon after, the rest of my team did the same. Some came with me, while others made other plans. After that, the CFO also quit, and the company is now falling apart. He gets what he deserves, so F him. Hope you're enjoying your via now, a-hole. Edit. I was one of the first people to be brought on. CEO is the founder, together with CFO, their brothers. If you want to watch the part 2, click the link here. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for your support.